Late night is when people say things they've been practicing all day. That's when she said it, quietly, like she wasn't sure it belonged to the room yet. You can't hide how you feel. She didn't say it to accuse me. She said it like an observation, the way you comment on weather you didn't expect. I work the front desk at a small independent hotel that smells faintly of old books and lemon cleaner. Night shifts are slower, forgiving. People soften around midnight. Their shoulders drop. Their voices change. That's how I noticed her, because she didn't soften. She stayed exactly herself, like the hour didn't apply. She checked in just after 11. No rush, no apology for the time. Mid-40s, maybe older if you measured confidence instead of skin. Dark coat draped over her arm instead of worn, like she'd planned to take it off eventually. She smiled, but only with her mouth. Her eyes stayed alert, cataloging the lobby, the lamps, me. Long night. I asked, default politeness. She tilted her head. Isn't it always? I gave her the room key, explained breakfast hours she wouldn't attend. She listened closely, the way people do when they don't want to miss something important, even if it's not. When our fingers brushed passing the key card, she didn't pull away. Neither did I. It wasn't romantic. It was noted. She stayed for a week. Business, I guessed. Always alone. Always downstairs late, laptop open but untouched, coffee going cold. We talked in fragments. Weather, the old elevator, how the lobby music looped too quickly. She asked my name on the third night, like she'd just decided I was real. She never asked my age. I think she already knew. One night the power flickered during a storm. Just for a second. The lights dimmed, came back wrong. She looked up at the ceiling, then at me, eyebrow raised. I laughed before I meant to. She smiled fully that time, quick and warm, then caught herself like she'd stepped too far into sunlight. You're very expressive, she said. I shrugged. Occupational hazard. She watched me for a second longer than necessary. Not in a way that asked for anything. In a way that waited. The kindness happened on the fifth night. Small enough that I could have pretended it didn't matter. She noticed my hands shaking while I refilled the coffee urn. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. Without a word, she reached out and steadied the pot with me. Her hand was warm. Steady. She didn't comment. Didn't smile. Just helped, then let go. I couldn't stop thinking about how natural it felt. Like we'd done it before. We talked longer after that. Not deeper, just longer. She avoided certain subjects with grace. I filled silences too quickly, then hated myself for it. Sometimes she watched me like she was listening to something I wasn't saying yet. That was the night she whispered it. The lobby was quiet. Rain tapping the windows, the clock too loud. I'd been telling a story that didn't need telling, circling something. She leaned in slightly, voice low, almost kind. You can't hide how you feel. I laughed it off. Said something stupid. She didn't correct me. She just looked away, picked up her coat, and wished me good night like it mattered. I went home at dawn, exhausted, replaying it all. The way she steadied my hands. The pause before she spoke. The fact that she noticed it all. And how, hours later, I still couldn't decide if she'd been talking about me or herself. The second real interaction happened by accident, which felt appropriate. Her printer jammed in the business center just after midnight. I heard the machine cough and die from the desk, followed by a quiet, controlled sigh that told me exactly who it was before I saw her. She stood there with one hand on the printer lid, the other holding a stack of papers that had lost their authority the second the ink stopped. I'm sorry, I said, already walking over. That thing only works when it feels respected. She huffed a laugh before she could stop herself. It surprised both of us. She straightened immediately after, like she'd revealed something private. It's fine, she said. I shouldn't be doing this now anyway. You say that like you're going to do it anyway. She glanced at me, measuring. Probably. I opened the printer, fished out the crumpled page. She leaned against the desk instead of helping, arms folded, watching me work. Guarded, but not closed. There's a difference. I noticed how her sleeves were pushed up just enough to show her wrists, how one thumb rubbed the inside of the other hand without purpose. A tired habit. You work nights a lot? She asked. Too much. She nodded. It shows. I couldn't tell if that was concern or observation. With her, it was always hard to tell. The printer whirred back to life. She exhaled, shoulders dropping a fraction. For a second, she looked older, not in a bad way. Just human confirmed. Lines at the corners of her eyes that softened when she smiled, which she did now, briefly. "Thank you," she said. "I hate needing help." I didn't notice. That earned me a look. Sharp, then amused. "You're polite." I try to be accurate. She laughed again, quieter this time. It sounded like it hadn't been used much lately. When the papers finished printing, she gathered them carefully, aligning the edges like that would keep everything else in order. "I used to be better at pacing myself," she said, not looking at me. "At knowing when to stop." I waited. She seemed to expect that. "When I didn't rush in," she added. "Now I just push until things break." "Printers are fragile," I offered. "So am I," she said, then paused. Her mouth tightened, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. She lifted her gaze to me, searching for something. Judgment, maybe, or worse, reassurance. I didn't give either. I just nodded. "Yeah, I know." The silence stretched, not awkward, just exposed. The hum of the lights. The distant elevator. I noticed how tired she looked up close, how carefully put together it all was. Like effort had become a uniform. She gathered her coat, then hesitated. Her hand hovered near my arm, didn't touch. "You're good at this," she said instead. "At fixing printers?" "At being here," she corrected softly. She left before I could answer. Back to her room. Back to whatever waited behind that door. I returned to the desk, but the space felt different, charged, like something had shifted slightly out of place. A few minutes later, the elevator dinged. She hadn't forgotten anything. She just looked at me once more before the doors closed, a look that lingered longer than it should have. I stood there after, hands resting on the counter, wondering why that pause felt heavier than any goodbye. The storm came in sideways that night, rain rattling against the windows like it was impatient with us. The lobby emptied early. Even the couple who argued in whispers by the vending machine gave up and went upstairs. By midnight, it was just the hum of the lights, the clock ticking too loud, and her, sitting at the far end of the couch with her shoes kicked off, coat folded beside her like she planned to stay. She hadn't said she was coming down. She just appeared, hair damp at the ends, sweater darker at the shoulders from the rain. She looked smaller without the heels, more tired without the armor. I noticed she was holding her phone too tightly, thumb hovering over the screen like it might bite her. "Elevator's slow tonight," she said, nodding toward the hallway, as if explaining herself. "It does that when it rains," I said. "Like it's thinking." She smiled, then sat back, pulling her knees up slightly. Close enough that I could see the faint crease between her brows. She didn't bother smoothing out anymore. We talked about nothing for a while. The storm, the city, how hotels make everything feel temporary on purpose. She listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, she chose her words carefully, like she was arranging fragile things on a shelf. Her phone buzzed. She stiffened instantly. The screen lit up her face for half a second before she turned it down, face down on the table between us. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was crowded. "Do you ever," she started, then stopped. Cleared her throat. "Do you ever feel like you're always just passing through your own life?" I leaned back against the desk, hands clasped to keep them still. "Sometimes I feel like I'm watching it from behind glass." She looked at me then. Really looked. Something shifted in her expression, recognition, maybe, or relief. Her shoulders dropped, just a little. "I'm not supposed to say this," she said quietly, "but I like talking to you. It's uncomplicated." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it wasn't uncomplicated at all, and we both knew it. I kept my voice even. "I don't think either of us is very good at uncomplicated." She huffed a breath. "No, I guess not." Her phone buzzed again. She flinched this time. Picked it up, glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. "I should take this." She stood, but didn't move away. Just stood there, too close now. I could smell rain on her sweater, something faintly citrus underneath. She turned slightly, voice low, controlled. I caught fragments. "I told you. Not tonight. This isn't fair." She ended the call with a sharp tap, then stayed where she was, staring at the dark screen like it had betrayed her. "I'm sorry," she said, not looking at me. That was history. You don't have to explain. I know, she said. But I want to. She looked up then, eyes searching, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. The storm surged outside, thunder rolling low. She took a step closer without realizing it. Or maybe she did. My hand lifted slightly from the desk, then stopped. There were rules. There were lines. There was everything unspoken hanging between us. She hesitated, breath catching, like she was about to say something she couldn't take back. And for one suspended second, neither of us moved, close enough that if I leaned in, if she tilted her head, the elevator dinged down the hall, loud and sudden. We both stepped back at the same time. The next night felt heavier before anything even happened. She didn't come down right away. I kept glancing at the elevator doors like they might explain themselves. When she finally appeared, it was almost 2. No coat this time. Hair pulled back like she'd needed it out of the way. She looked decided. That scared me more than if she'd looked unsure. She stopped at the desk instead of sitting, hands flat on the counter, close enough that I could see the faint tremor in her fingers. "We need to stop pretending this is casual," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm, the kind that comes after you've rehearsed something alone. I swallowed. Okay. She watched my face like she was bracing for impact. "I don't know what this is," she continued. "And I don't like not knowing. It makes me careless." "You don't seem careless." "That's because you don't know me," she said, softer now. "You know who I am at night. That's different." I didn't interrupt. I didn't fill the space. I could feel my heart in my throat, my hands gripping the edge of the desk to keep from reaching for her. She exhaled slowly. I tell myself this is harmless, that it's just conversation. But then I find myself waiting, timing my evenings, choosing this elevator. She looked away, jaw tightening. The admission hung between us, fragile and exposed. "I'm not," she started, then stopped. Shook her head once. "I'm not supposed to want this kind of attention anymore." I said her name before I could stop myself. It sounded different out loud. She looked back at me immediately. "I'm trying to be responsible," she said. "And I don't trust myself around you." The lobby felt impossibly quiet. No rain. No elevator. Just the clock and our breathing. "I don't want to be something you regret," I said. Her eyes softened in a way that hurt. "That's not the danger." Silence settled in. Thick, deliberate. She didn't reach for me. I didn't move. The distance between us felt intentional now, like a choice we were both making in real time. "I need to know," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "Are we doing this because it's easy, or because it feels like the last place we're allowed to be honest?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. The truth was tangled. I could feel it pressing against my ribs, wanting out, but I didn't know which part would cause less damage. She waited, patient, terrifyingly still. I think," I said slowly, "we're doing it because it doesn't ask us to be brave." "Not yet." Her lips pressed together. A small nod, like something had landed exactly where she feared it would. She straightened, gathering herself with visible effort. "Then I should go upstairs." She turned, took 2 steps, then stopped without looking back. "If I stay," she said, voice unsteady for the first time, "I won't be able to pretend this means nothing." The elevator doors opened behind her. She didn't step inside right away. The shift didn't announce itself. It arrived like most things do, quietly, while I was busy convincing myself I understood where we stood. She didn't come down the next night, or the one after that. By the third, I'd stopped pretending I wasn't checking the elevator every time it opened. I told myself she was busy, that this was what responsible looked like. The lobby returned to its normal emptiness, and I told myself that was relief. Then, just before my shift ended, I found the envelope. It was tucked beneath the clipboard at the desk, my name written carefully across the front. Not flirtatious, not hurried, the kind of handwriting that takes its time even when it doesn't have to. My stomach tightened before I even opened it. "I'm sorry to do this in writing," it began. I didn't trust myself to say it out loud. I leaned against the counter as I read. She wrote about leaving early, about how the hotel had started to feel less temporary than it was supposed to, about how she didn't want to disappear without explaining the sudden distance. Then the sentence that changed everything. "You remind me of someone I loved when I was younger." And I don't mean that romantically. I mean in the way grief sneaks up on you years later, and asks for attention you thought you'd already paid. My throat closed. I kept reading. She wrote about a man she'd loved in her 20s. Not dramatic. Not tragic in the way movies like. He'd gotten sick. Quickly. Too quickly for all the plans they'd made in the margins of other things. She wrote about hospitals and waiting rooms and how she learned to be composed because someone had to be. After he died, she wrote, "I got very good at not needing anyone. It's a skill. It looks like confidence from the outside." I could see her as she wrote it, sitting upright, choosing words like she chose everything else. Carefully, deliberately, as if precision could keep the past contained. "You don't look like him," she continued, "but you listen the way he did. Like you're trying to understand, not impress." And I didn't realize how much I'd missed being seen like that. I folded the letter slowly, hands unsteady. The lobby felt different again. Smaller, like it was holding its breath with me. I didn't see her leave. Didn't get to say anything measured or kind. I stood there instead, staring at the desk where she'd once steadied my hands, realizing that I hadn't just been flirting with possibility. I'd been brushing up against something unfinished. Just before I locked up, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. Unknown number. Her voice filled the quiet space, softer than it had ever been in person. "I didn't want you to think you were a distraction," she said. "You weren't. You were a reminder. And I don't know yet if that's something I can carry." There was a pause. A breath. "But I wanted you to know," she added, barely audible. "That meeting you mattered. Even if I'm still figuring out what that means." The line went dead. I stood there long after, the letter folded in my pocket, realizing that whatever had been building between us hadn't broken. It had simply changed weight. She came back on a morning shift, which felt intentional in a way I didn't know how to prepare for. The lobby looked wrong in daylight. Too honest, too exposed. Dust in the corners. Sunlight catching things I'd learned to ignore at night. I was halfway through logging a maintenance issue when I saw her reflection in the glass door before I saw her turn the handle. No coat. Just a soft jacket, unbuttoned. Hair loose this time. She looked less armored and more tired than I remembered. Real. We didn't smile. "Hi," she said, like we'd never left anything unfinished. "Hi." She stood there for a second, then nodded toward the small table near the window. "Do you have a minute?" I checked the desk out of habit. There was nothing urgent. There hadn't been for a while. "Yeah." We sat. Not too close. Close enough to feel it anyway. The street outside was loud with normal life. Coffee cups, traffic, people going somewhere else. She rested her hands on the table, fingers laced, then unlaced them, then stilled them again. "I didn't come back to fix anything," she said. "Or to make this neat. I didn't expect neat." That earned me a look, brief, appreciative. "Good." She took a breath. Let it out slowly. "I'm still afraid," she said. "Not of you. Of what happens if I stop managing everything." I nodded. "I'm afraid of becoming something you lean on too hard." Her mouth curved, not quite a smile. "You already thought about that." "I've had time." Silence settled between us, different from before. Not charged. Grounded. She reached into her bag and set the folded letter on the table, sliding it back toward me like a shared object instead of a confession. "I don't regret writing that," she said. "But I don't want it to be the only thing you know about me." "I don't think it is." She studied my face, searching for something familiar. Whatever she found seemed to steady her. She leaned back slightly, then forward again, decision flickering across her features. "I don't know what this becomes," she said. "And I won't pretend I'm brave enough to name it. I don't need it named." That surprised her. She blinked, then exhaled, some tension leaving her shoulders. Her hand shifted on the table, closer to mine, without touching. I noticed the small scar near her knuckle I'd never seen before. Noticed how her fingers trembled, then didn't. "Then we're agreeing to something quiet," she said. "Something that asks us to pay attention." "Yes." She didn't hesitate this time. Her fingers brushed mine, light, deliberate. Not a promise. Not a test. Just contact. I didn't close my hand around hers. I let it be what it was. We sat like that, the noise of the city moving around us, the morning stretching on without asking anything from us yet. No rush. No performance. Just shared space, earned slowly. After a while, she leaned her forehead briefly against my shoulder. A pause measured in seconds, not sentiment. Then she sat back, composed again. But different. I should go, she said. I nodded. Okay. She stood, then hesitated, hand lingering on the back of my chair. Thank you, she said, not for staying, not for understanding. Just thank you. When she left, the lobby didn't feel empty. It felt settled. I still work nights, though not as many. I don't know if that's growth or just adjustment, but it feels different now. Less like hiding, more like choosing. People ask sometimes, friends, coworkers, if anything ever happened with her. They mean it the way people always mean it. A clean arc, a label, a moment they can recognize. I usually shrug and say we stayed in touch. Which is true. It's just not the whole truth. What happened didn't look like much from the outside. She comes by sometimes when she's in the city. Not always the hotel. Sometimes we meet for coffee in the late afternoon, when the light is slanted and honest. Sometimes we just walk. We talk about ordinary things, work frustrations, books she half finished, the way I'm thinking about going back to school. She listens the same way she always did. I talk a little less now. I've learned the value of letting silence finish a thought. She's different. Not lighter, exactly, but less braced. She still keeps her life orderly, still plans her exits. But there are moments when she lets herself linger. She laughs more easily. When she gets tired, she admits it instead of pushing through. Once, without thinking, she rested her head against my arm while we waited for a crosswalk light to change. She noticed what she'd done, smiled to herself, didn't pull away. I'm different too. I don't mistake intensity for meaning anymore. I don't rush to fill every quiet space. I've learned that wanting someone doesn't have to turn into losing yourself to them. That care can be steady without being heavy. We never made promises we couldn't keep. We never pretended this solved anything from before. What we did instead was show up when we could, honestly, without asking the other to be smaller or stronger than they were that day. Late nights still do something to people. They strip away performance. They make room for truths you didn't know you were carrying. When I think back to the first time she whispered, "You can't hide how you feel," I realize she wasn't challenging me. She was naming what she'd just noticed in herself. Love, I've learned, doesn't always announce itself with fireworks or certainty. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's just two people deciding not to look away when something real passes between them, and trusting that it's enough to let it change them, even if it doesn't stay forever. We're not a story with a neat ending. We're something ongoing, something attentive, and somehow, that feels like the most honest kind of resolution. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?